When stories are lost, things fall apart. That powerful reminder sets the tone for the Things Fall Apart Festival 2025, a celebration of Igbo heritage, art and identity. It is a reawakening of the spirits of a land through the lens of cultural legacy. This year's edition of a Things Fall Festival explores the journey of remembering, retelling and reimagining the soul of the Igbo people both at home and in the diaspora. At the heart of the festival, the Center for Memories brought to life the character of Unoka as portrayed in the timeless works of Achebe. Unoka, the musical soul of a people, became a symbol of harmony, peace and love, echoing the rhythms of traditional Igbo life during July 2025 edition of Ńkàtá, a monthly distinguished speaker series organized by the Center for Memories. Scholars and elders illuminated the values that form the bedrock of Igbo society. A decentralized system of governance rooted in collective responsibility, wisdom-filled proverbs, witty sayings, and a reverence for ancestry. Reimagining in this context means returning to the roots, the four sacred market days, Eke, Orie, Afo, and Nkwo, which form the Igbo calendar. It is a call to remember Allah, the Earth goddess, and to restore balance through Umuada, the daughters of a land, who stand for equity and justice. This festival also drew parallels between Achebe's classic Things Fall Apart and today's realities, the loss of language, fading customs, and the urgent need to preserve identity. It reaffirmed that in Igbo culture, music was more than art, it was communication. It also showed that power was not in weapons, but in wisdom and in the bands of yam a man could harvest. The director of the Eastern Nigerian International Film Festival, Mrs. Obianujuaku Nwakalor-Akukwe, was the guest speaker for the July edition. In her presentation, which she entitled Unoka, Things Fall Apart When Stories Are Lost, Reimagining Igbo Through Cultural Memory, highlighted that in Igbo cosmology, the living, the dead, and the unborn remained in constant dialogue. She used Unoka's musical fluency to explore the spiritual essence of the Igbo worldview.
We often speak about Igbo as a land, a place on the map. But Igbo is more than geography. It is a worldview, a way of being, in which community, spirit, and nature were so deeply connected. So the Igbo believed that life itself was spiritual. That was and still is our philosophy, a sense of purpose, wholeness, of Ubuntu, if you will. And when we speak of cultural memory, it is not nostalgia. It is survival. To reimagine Igbo through cultural memory is to walk back through the smog of colonial disruption, spiritual erasure, and economic devaluation and retrieve what was almost lost, our dignity, our designs, our spirituality to which our moral compass is tied. Before colonialism interrupted and recorded our value systems, our culture had created space for all kinds of people. There was room for the musician, the storyteller, the dibia, the hunter, the farmer, Diji, the palm wine tapper, Diochi, Dimba, the wrestler, Dinka, the creative person, and so many of them. Back then, strength was not only measured by aggression, power, or authority. It was also measured by wisdom, empathy, and restraint. But times changed. What changed? Colonial rule, missionary teachings, and later on, our own internal anxieties and insecurities. They turned us towards a narrower version of manhood, one that glorified dominance, immoral wealth, and excessive materialism. And in that shift, Unoka the flautist, the gentle father, the man who preferred music to war, became everything we were told to reject. But I want us to also pause even further and think. Unoka was not just a passive figure. He was a creative, a dinka, a master of music. And in a society where professions like DG and DOG were honored for sustaining the community, the dinka held a vital role too. He was the conscience of the community, the one who gave expression to joy, grief, conflict, and hope. His flute was not mere entertainment. It was a vessel of memory, emotion, communication, and collective reflection. And like all true artists, like myself and many others, he carried what others felt but could not say or express. Music in traditional Igbo life was not entertainment alone. It was communication, it was ritual, it was resistance and rest. The flutist was not idle, he was integral. And Unoka's role as a flutist, when understood in this light, was not one of failure but of function. His art served a purpose that our modern metrics no longer know how to measure. And Achebe, Achebe, masterful as always, gives us a glimpse of this in the wrestling scene. And that is my best scene in the book. When Okonkwo prepares to wrestle Amalinze the cat, the sound of the flute floats in the background, a sound that reminded him about his father that he so despised. So even in Okonkwo's greatest moments, where he is at his most physically powerful, Achebe brings back the presence of Unoka through music. There's a lot packed in this scene: family history, identity, remembrance. And I do not think that it is accidental. That is memory. Unoka might be the one reminding us to slow down, to breathe, to live fully in the moment, to live life because of tomorrow, the very things so many of us are now trying to relearn. And there's something deeply ironic in all of this, that the very traits colonialism taught us to dismiss, tenderness, creativity, and emotional openness, are now celebrated around the world. And the traits we were made to embrace, stoicism and relentless striving, are the very things unraveling many of us from the inside. Because before all of that, our culture had created space for everyone. We lost that, not by tradition, but by disruption, and we are only beginning to remember. And maybe Achebe was not only showing us Okonkwo's tragedy, but offering us a quiet alternative. And maybe he was whispering that our future as a people does not depend on Okonkwo's fire alone, but also on Unoka's way of being, that both are needed and that neither should be forgotten. And maybe our loss of cultural memory is not simply about forgetting facts, but about forgetting our options, forgetting that there were once many ways that made us Igbo. Because when stories are lost, it is not just memory that disappears, it is identity, unity, spirituality, and even vision. We begin to lose our sense of honor, of home, not just as a place we return to at Christmas to show off our beautiful cars and mansion, or a place to perform culture by wearing red cap and displaying our isiago, but honor as a symbol. We forget that in Igbo cosmology, life is not linear, it is cyclical. And that to forget is to fall out of rhythm with who we are. And Igbo, in my opinion, didn't fall because the white man came. Part of it. But I think it fell and continued to fall because the stories stopped being told and documented. Our cosmology, the Igbo cosmology, was never random. It taught us that the dead, the living, and the unborn exist in constant dialogue. That names carry memory, that rituals are not superstition, they are structure. They map our time, our values, and our place in the world. But when memory fades, language begins to sleep, and with it, we lose the frame through which we once understood everything. Because to name is to remember. And if we can no longer call on the names of our deities, like Akwali Omumu, Ogugu, Udo, or speak of Ofo Nogu or Ikenga without discomfort or apology, then we are not merely forgetting, we are unlearning who we are. So what do we do now? We reimagine. And reimagining is hard work. It is invention rooted in remembrance. It means returning to the sources of memory that still linger among us and shaping them to meet this moment. We do not have to look very far to begin. The fragments are still here with us, some whole, others cracked, but still alive with meaning. And perhaps the first of these is our language. Let us begin the reimagination with our language. Our proverbs are short, but they carry weight. In just a few words, they pass down lessons, values, and warnings. The Igbo do not shout to teach. We whisper wisdom in lines like Ebe Belu, Ugo Belu, and trust the hearer to understand. These are not just sayings, they are political blueprints. They teach justice, equity, and diplomacy. Then we turn to storytelling. I remember the moonlight evenings filled with riddles and tales of the tortoise, not just to entertain children, but to teach society. These stories carried lessons on greed, humility, cleverness, and survival. Our market days, Eke, Ore, Avo, Nankwo, they weren't just names on a calendar. They shaped how we lived, when we gathered, traded, rested, celebrated, and even buried our dead.
Na mbụ ọja m na-asị ekekele ụwa na ọkwa ọja ekenekwa gị na eluigwe na ala na-ekene gị na urukpuru na kpakpando na-ekene gị na ugwu na ndịna na-ekene gị. Ọjamana ekenekwa ọka okwu gwara anyị okwu mmiri dolo edo na-asị mmiri dolo edo na ọ ya abalụ gị. Mmiri dolo edo na ọkwa ọja na-ekene gị. Maka ka onye si eme ka ekwe si akpụ ya, ka onye si eme ka ọja si akpụ ya.
The director of the Center for Memories, Mazi Ihanyi-Boko, added with conviction in his words, "Home is supreme. When things fall apart, we must reimagine Igbo land through cultural memory, especially through the oral transmission of our shared knowledge."
Home is supreme. Home is supreme. Home is important. When things fall apart, reimagine Igbo through cultural memory. As a people, we cannot move forward without an idea of who we are, what we do, what we are known for. That is culture. So we need to reignite our cultural memory to be able to transcend the now. Right? We need to begin to look at where we are coming from to be able to project into the future. So it's a very important conversation for a people, our people. So there's no better time than now to have this conversation.
Already, the reawakening spirit is heightened. The core remains clear, and that is, tell the story, hold the memory, and pass the cultural legacy of Ndi Igbo. Jideofor Ebuche, Aneke TV.